Welcome to Story Comic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 428. I'm your host, Barney Smith of StoryComic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and nominated writer, David Quinn. David.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
everybody. It's nice to be here. We're working on a lot of stuff right now. We had a very successful omnibus for my adult horror thing that I do with Tim Vigil. You might have heard, called Faust, and we did 3 editions of that over the last couple of years, and they're still selling, and it's wonderful. And we're getting ready to do a couple of the other oldies. The Night Vision series I did with Hannibal King, and the Gothic Knights series that Tim did with David Barber. You can pledge to that right now on Kickstarter.
Oh, cool.
And, I'm enjoying the continued success of my kids' books and the Doctor Strange reprints. Not writing any new things for Marvel right now. It's not that I say never, but it's definitely something that I don't focus on as much as the creator-owned stuff. And speaking of the creator-owned stuff, I'm working on something called Let's Go, the Kids Comic Studio Anthology. My friend Patrick Lugo and I have a short story in there. And this is an anthology that brings to basically children about the middle grades, early readers, different kinds of stories, all dealing with journeys. There's a theme that we love called "A journey is best measured in friends rather than miles." And so everyone encounters, some kinds of creatures or strangers on their journeys. And we have about 36 short stories in this book. So this is going to be the next Kickstarter. Right. So I'm sure you'll hear from Patrick, and you'll hear from me, and you'll hear from the other members of the Kids Comics Unite, which is a community that got together during COVID, basically because we couldn't meet up. So we started meeting up online, and we ended up developing, throughout our global network, we ended up developing a lot of collaborations and projects, classes. We've given presentations to each other about our craft, and we've brought in agents, other authors, other professionals. I'm sure you've probably talked to Patrick about this, right? You've probably even featured on the show. I thought I saw that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not telling you anything new. There's a lot going on right now, and here I am at the kind of quiet winding down point of my day, so I'm pretty relaxed, and maybe a little too relaxed, but I'm just going to be happy to chat with you for a bit about what we're doing and story, which I'll love.
Well, so talk to me about the fact that you pivot back and forth a bit by writing like horror, and then you're writing children's. Is that tapping into the same same part of your imagination where both seem to be, reaching out to discover unknown things and learning about these unknown things?
Well, yeah, that's perceptive. I mean, that's probably part of it. I know that there's some people that are surprised by it because they really love to know, like they think they really know somebody and they really know what they're going to expect from somebody. And then if you write something different, they're almost like, well, why did you do this? This is weird. I want your other stuff or whatever. So I don't get too much of that. I got pretty patient readers, but I know I had some people that sometimes saying, I can't believe that you wrote something as transgressive and crazy and basically insane like the horror opera Faust, and then came in the next day with a book for kids about a lullaby that all the daddy and mommy monsters sing to their baby monsters when they go to bed in the morning. So I mean, I don't know, it's just like I can be a dad and a crazy hormonal adolescent in the same body, I guess.
Well, it's like that with like when David Lynch has done a lot of horror, but then he also did a G-rated Disney movie. So there is something where it's you're right, the bridge between children's stories in horror is actually a lot shorter than most people would realize.
Well, I continue to love reading aloud to kids, which is part of the biggest reason that I love kids' books. Because when I go read to kids at a library or a school or a hospital or a classroom or whatever, I'll just like go full throttle on the sound effects and the howling wolves and the people screaming and stuff like that. And I'll get them real loud and I'll let the kids come along. Like, can you howl too? Howl at the moon with me, and just do all that. So, I mean, I think I like noise and I like drama and I like to get it going. And I'll always love reading to kids. Um, I'm I'm a dad, like I say. I have a daughter who's now, well, an adult. Really, she's a sophomore in college. But we spent so long like reading to each other when she was a baby and a young kid and an older kid, and now we still enjoy stories together. But maybe it's like watching some anime or a movie or something.
Right. Now, when it comes to the stories, because as a you're an author, you're a writer, how do you find how do you find the illustrators for your books? Is that something that you're able to do, or is that something that publishers do for you?
Both, really both. The traditional publishing route, and by this I would mean like the book you have on the screen right now, published by Penguin Random House. I was introduced to Ashley Spires, who drew that from my editor, Phoebe A. And she was our go-between, and she was our coach, and she was the one who took my manuscript and wedded it with the designs that Ashley Spires had produced.
Mm.
On the other hand, there's other things, like many of the comics I've done, say with Hannibal King, I mentioned Night Vision and Faust with Tim Vigil and others, Patrick Lugo, where you just have a friend and you have a simpatico love of story. You want to do the same kind of story. The story Patrick and I are doing for the KCU anthology is called Punt, which is an onomatopoeia for what the sound of basketball makes when it hits the ground. It's about a middle grade kid trudging home from middle school, heavy backpack on his back, full of the cares and woes of an adolescent, looking for adventure. And what he finds on his adventure, between a strange bird that seems to be trying to communicate to him and a beautiful, polished drum kit that has been left in the trash, what he discovers is a musical and like almost spiritual journey. He becomes like in touch with something that's deeply primal. And this was this was all done with, I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any words. The closest it comes to words is when he laughs ha, or the bird says biddy woo, biddy woo, biddy woo, or the drum goes thwackadush gang, or whatever, So we did onomatopoeia for the writing. So this was a this was a departure, almost like an experiment to like, can you tell the whole story without anyone actually talking?
So when you kind of like go in with an illustrator that you've already predefined, like this is somebody that I want to work with, is there any editing that you actually do within the script to say, like hypothetically speaking, say with Patrick, like you want to write a story about an aardvark, and Patrick's like, I have no idea how to draw an aardvark, make it a cat instead. Like, and is there a relationship when you actually go in as a partner with an illustrator that they also have some sort of like editing permissions into how the story is going to go based off of their own skills?
Well, two things about that, just from my own experience. One is I try to write what happens and what the emotional effect is on the characters, and if possible, what the emotional effect should be on the reader. And I won't try to dictate too much about exactly what things look like. Although if it's a basketball, I'm going to say it's a basketball. And if it was an aardvark, I'd probably say that too. But the aardvark might change, It could become a koala bear or something, I don't know. So anyway, the other thing is always let your illustrators um, play with it,
Mm.
because for every one time that they make a choice where you go kind of like, that's kind of missing a little bit of the emotional effect we wanted, or there's a plot problem with that because there's something missing that we need to see, or we won't understand what it is later. So maybe there's a fact that you'll have to go over after the fact with them. But other than that, for every one time that there's some fact that's missing, there's probably like 10 times that whatever they were excited about drawing is going to be more interesting and more dramatic and more emotional and more fun. So let them do it.
Mm. How easy is it for you to write for an illustrator as opposed to writing out a prose script and having them imagine through their own mind's eye what you seek? In a way, it's so, do you perceive that the illustrators need to look at through your imagination lens, or do you give them full permission to come up with the images on from what how they perceive it?
Sometimes I lead with something that's kind of strong, but not as a dictator, more as just like I really have a strong feeling about something. Like,
Right.
wouldn't this be great if we're looking up at Hannibal sitting at the drum kit and he looks like the god of noise ready to hit the drums? So sometimes there's something I sort of direct, like what the camera would look like, but other times I don't touch any of that. There's another artist in our group who read one of my scripts for a middle grade graphic novel I'm working on, and she found it refreshing that I didn't tell the illustrator how to compose what they were going to do on either the page or the panel, but I
Mm.
gave him or her, like a series of 180 moments that were discrete moments, because they don't move those panels. It all the movement happens in between panels. So it's like just giving them the discrete moments and the emotional content.
Right.
I had a pretty good professor in college who would he would blow students' minds because they would be thinking they had to be using critical language and literary terms, and maybe talk about the similes and the metaphors. And instead he would say, like, describe Hamlet's moment of emotional content when he says, you know, to be or not to be.
Right. Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. A lot of your comics are based off of, like, stereotypically speaking, there's like 4 genres of comics. You have your space
Mm-hmm.
comics, you have your street level comics, you have your international espionage comics, and you have your comics that are based off of magic and horror. Um, do you feel as though as a writer you've been either put into that, do you feel as though you've been put into that category of writing magic and horror, or is that just a category you just feel most comfortable in exploring on your own?
Yeah, I'm definitely at home in that area.
Right.
Um, but I have made deliberate choices at times, like the addiction that Vincent Zolo and I co-created is basically a crime book about a doctor
Okay.
who can drug you with her touch, and she works in a world that's really very similar just to pick a couple comics that most people would know, Daredevil or Elektra or Hawkeye, right? It's a world with a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance, a little bit of family stuff, and then the crime world.
Mm.
So, but even in the crime world comic, I have this drug element, which puts things into a hallucinatory and nightmare situation. Sometimes, someone might be having a really bad drug trip and they're reliving some horror from their life of some assaulting situation. So I mean, I know I get dark wherever I go, but
Mm.
part of the reason I did the addiction, and I think my partner Vincent would probably agree, and I know that the rest of our team probably is simpatico with this. Um, Spending a lot of time thinking about hell in writing horror made me also want to do something that was more about like someone fighting for a little bit of light, a little bit of health, a little bit of healing, a
Mm.
little bit of positive relationship, even though the world can be hellish.
Mm. So what would you say then, David? It's like if you had somebody who has never read, um, say, any of your books, or like either the children's books and the comics, and you just like cover over the names of who wrote it, and you told them, what do these books have in common? What would you say is the through line that is a very distinct trademark David Quinn style of writing?
That's interesting. I love that question. There's a writer named Clint Finley that's written about my work who helped me understand how to answer your question. One possible way, when he read The Addiction, he said, "There's a scene here it's nothing like Faust, but it's very, very like David Quinn, and it has to do with a woman who's not sure what's real and what sure is illusion." And this is something I enjoy in drama. This is something I enjoyed in classical literature growing up. This is something I enjoyed in comic books since the 70s. you know, Real versus illusion.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Um,
And next
and
if you look
so,
at Faust again, you're going to see all sorts of trippy stuff where Tim and I both like pushed all the illusion and hallucination and nightmare dream
right.
type images.
So I'm kind of curious too, is because you have such good relationships with like the with comic book illustrators, and you also have connections now with children's book illustrators. Have you ever thought about doing a project where you kind of like flip the two styles and like have like a, a comic book illustrator illustrate a children's book of yours, and then maybe grabbing like Ashley Spires, who's been Ashley has been on our show once,
Oh,
having
really?
her,
He's
yeah,
great.
we were talking about Binky the cat for like 45 minutes. Um, would you like have her do a comic book? Like, how would that look for you?
Hey, I'd love it. I'd love it. Um, but I am in a like I am in a commercial business of publishing,
Right,
and I can't publish absolutely whatever I want. I
right.
mean, I can, but I don't know if it's gonna pay for itself, and then I'm gonna be in trouble. So, I mean, I do have to find the things that I can find a publishing partner like Penguin Random House or another,
Mm,
even a small indie publisher
right.
or a bigger one, and find a place that help me get it distributed to a large enough audience. We're playing with Kickstarter. I mean, the KCU thing will be my second Kickstarter, or third, actually. I'm sorry, I forgot heavy metal. I mean, I
Oh,
didn't manage that Kickstarter, but Tim and I have a story in the first issue of the new heavy metal, and we both were helping, advise and push that Kickstarter to success. I mean, we're trying to find every single model we can to find a way to make it commercially viable, to
mm,
share our stories, find an audience, get paid. You
right.
know.
Do you
Anyway,
have?
so I don't know if that really answers your question, but I do
Yeah.
know that I keep trying different things. I invited a good friend of mine. He's still not like agreed to do this, so I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's someone who's done indie comics for 40 years.
Okay.
And he's definitely like has a comics cred. And I said, let's do a graphic novel for kids. We're
Right.
both dads, and this is about a kid growing up and what they take from their parents and how their parents like have to sort of pull back, hold back, let the kid experiment on their own. You're a dad, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, if your kids are younger than my daughter, then maybe you don't know it in the same way. But you know what I mean. Let them
Right.
stretch their own wings because they're going to have to.
Right.
So I mean, it's a story that's sort of the drama for both the kid going out on her own, and for the parents who have to let her.
You're obviously an extremely creative person. Do you have a notebook of that one dream story that you've been trying to get someone to let you do, but no one's bid on it yet? Do you have you must have some story that you're waiting to get going.
I only have some things. The closest I come to that is I have a few projects that are taking a very long time to develop for me. And it's like there's no real easy way to sell it right away. So I kind of like I got a piece of one written right here and take to my computer. And you just kind of like think about it all the time. It's in the background. You're working on it while you're walking the dog in the shower. You're working on it when you put down the taxes you had to finish, and you deliver the latest script to an illustrator who's waiting for it because they need to start drawing it next week. And you go back to that sort of laboratory. So I definitely have a few things that may take like the rest of my life to see the light of day, or else I'll have to like give them to my daughter on my deathbed and say, find somebody to publish this.
So as you mentioned too, the Kids Comic Night anthology, you and Patrick have one you're working on putting together. That's going to be a part of it. And remind us the name of it. It's Lunged.
Our story is called Punt.
Punt,
when you
that's
hit
what it was. Yeah.
sidewalk. Punt. And the anthology is called Let's Go, a kids comic studio anthology. So we're starting to talk about this for real. I honestly should have checked what I can actually say out loud. But sometime this spring, it's going to be a Kickstarter. And then we're going to make a lot of noise about it. And all of us are going to reach out to our, 340 best friends and try to find a lot of support for this book. And then, I'm pretty sure it's a project with enough interesting creators from around the world and interesting creators with real diverse backgrounds, both who they are as human beings and also what they've done in their careers. And some people are brand new to this. They just I want to learn how to tell stories. And then there's a handful of people that have been doing, professional storytelling for a while, and everything in between. And so I think it's a pretty good story. And what's interesting about it is anthologies are kind of working for people right now. And when I think about, well, why? I think maybe people like to get a sampling of many different things without having to buy many different things.
Right.
So if they're going to get like 30-ish stories in one couple 100-page book, they're going to have lots to choose from in terms of the kinds of stories, the kinds of art, the kinds of writing, including that one crazy one that's nothing but onomatopoeia. And I think it's going to find enough people to support it and back it and make it a real book. I can't wait.
Thank you so much, David. This has been a genuine pleasure talking to you.
I agree. I love this, and I'm like I said, it's like my winding down point. So you woke me back up.
Writer and author? No, I could just say because those are two different titles, writer and author, right?
Yeah, but I just say writer because whether I'm writing a children's book or a picture book or a comic book, or, even when I'm writing music, it's like, well, that's writing.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me get the intro in and we'll jump right into it. You ready, David?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me turn off the front light here.